So today marks a Women's Day. It's a day when 20,000 South African women from different racial and cultural backgrounds marched to the Union buildings 65 years ago. Under the theme of Realizing Women's Rights, the National Research Foundation says it will continue supporting women and girls in science and technology. To talk to us about how they're doing this, we are joined by Dr. Romilla Maharaj, who is the Foundation's Executive Director for Human and Infrastructure Capacity Development. Thank you so much for speaking to us. You guys have made amazing progress in funding female researchers in the country, which is, I mean, really quite a feat. But let's talk about that progress, what it looked like some 20 years ago, the amount of female researchers that we had, and now how we're doing in funding them.
Well, good morning and happy Women's Day to you and to the women across our country. Indeed, over the past 2 decades, we have made great strides. The NRF supports postgraduate students up to the doctoral level, and we also support researchers right from the early career to the very senior researchers. And in terms of the postgraduate students, back in 2001, we were funding just over 40% female postgraduate students. And by 2020, we had achieved having 61% of our postgraduate students that we supported being women. We've also been able to make gains in terms of the female researchers that we supported. And that is right from the early career through to the senior researchers. And there we've seen an increase from 22% 2 decades ago to 49% by 2020. But the battle continues.
Yeah.
We have had much greater gains in supporting early career researchers and up to about 60%. But we still see an underrepresentation of women at the senior level.
Yeah, I do want to be optimistic, though, and look at the gains that we have made and talk a little bit about what you've noticed then as we've continued to fund more and more women contributing to the knowledge economy, the sort of focus that women primarily really like to have, and what sort of innovation we have then coming out of South African women.
So there are some disciplines in which there is an underrepresentation of men, and that is not a South African phenomenon. We see that across the world. There are some disciplines that do attract more women. And women in South Africa have done extremely well, particularly in the fields in health sciences. Some of the women names that have become household names in the pandemic have been people like Professor Glenda Gray, Professor Qureshi Abdul Karim. We've also, another name that you will have seen in the media is Professor Neo Kong, who's done some wonderful work in the field of nanotechnology. Professor Maureen Coetzee in the field of malaria. And also we have seen some leading researchers in the education field, Professor Julian Adler, Professor Mamoketi Pakeng, and we also have leading researchers in the field of child and human development, Professor Linda Richter, and we have Professor Bana at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah. So we are seeing increasing numbers of women that are achieving great strides in their fields.
Yeah. What's interesting is because of the pandemic, some of those names that you've mentioned have to some extent become household names, haven't they? Where a lot of South Africans know exactly who, Professor Glenda Gray is, for instance, which is really remarkable. Does that mean that we could possibly start seeing more young female talent then as well go, really a lot further in their academic work and also contribute to new ideas?
Indeed. We have been focusing on supporting women, encouraging full-time studies, particularly at the doctoral level, and to encourage women to complete their doctoral degrees by their early 30s. So in terms of the NRF doctoral graduations, about 1/3 of our doctoral graduates are women. And those are on average women in their early 30s. It takes around about 15 years to be able to achieve that stature of an internationally leading researcher and scholar. And so I think with the increasing number of women that we are supporting and that are coming through the system at the early career stages, certainly in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see higher proportions of women making a larger impact in the R&D sector.